Hi, good afternoon, viewers, and welcome to Matters of Public Importance on Channel 6. I'm yours, Gail Teixeira, Opposition Chief Whip representing the People's Progressive Party, civic, parliamentarians, and the People's Progressive Party. On this program, we shall focus, as always, on matters of public importance, bring you information and discussion on issues and matters that are concerned to you, the Guyanese public, right here every Thursday between 12:30 and 1:30 on Channel 6. And as usual, before we get into the program, I remind you of the numbers that you can use to call in. 225-0010 and 225-0008. And as I always remind you, the Office of the Leader of Opposition is located at 304 Church Street, Queenstown, between New Garden and Peter Rose Streets. And we have a big sign so you can see which building is ours. And of course, we're open Monday to Saturday, Monday to Fridays, usually from about 8:39 until 5:30, and then on Saturdays from about 9:30 until about 1:30. So please feel free to drop in if you have issues you want to raise, concerns, or you just want to meet people in the opposition and express your views. It doesn't matter if you voted for us or not. You're welcome. We're here to represent, and we're elected to represent the people of our country. And just to remind you, Freedom Radio is still going on FM 91.1 Demerara, 90.5 Berbice, 90.7 Essequibo. Lots of call-in programs, chat programs, education, informational programs. So please feel free to check it out. We started this week, July 24th, with 13 more prisoners escaping. And these ones, the minister had said over the weekend, when they moved some of those into the building they just hurriedly constructed at Lusignan Prison, they had deliberately kept the balance, which the numbers were never sure of, 91, 100, or more than 100, in the pasture, because one, they didn't want them to contaminate the others, because these were the real bad ones. And so they put the real bad ones in the pasture, which was a swamp, terrible conditions, I must say, and kept them there, and lo and behold, they got out of the pasture. Does that make sense to you? Why would you put the hardcore guys, if that's the choice you have, because there are other places they could have taken the prisoners to, other than keeping in the pasture. I guess they didn't want to contaminate other places as well. So they left them in the pasture, and they say that 13 escaped. And we have to trust them on that one, don't we? Because we know no better. But does that make all sense to you? Well, we have to ask Mr. Ramjatan. And we are glad that so far the disciplined forces have captured 7 of these 13. However, we still have 6 left, plus the original 4 left over of the 6 that escaped from Camp Street Prison on July the 9th. And then, they then moved the prisoners after the most recent escapees, moved those that were in the pasture, and took them back to Camp Street, where the brick building had survived the fire. And again, they had trouble managing the prisoners, moving them into the building, and so forth. So they seem to be moving from one catastrophe to another. But on a lighter side, because all of these are terribly serious and issues that agonize our people, that on the lighter side, I understand from, of course, social media, that when one of the prisoners who was caught and taken before the court, the magistrate, he said, "Your Honor, I didn't escape from the prison, I escaped from a pasture." Well, the prisoner had a sense of humor, I must say. Well, we posed a lot of questions, in fact 22, to the minister on the July 13th Matters of Public Importance program. On July 15th, after hurriedly sending a message that he wanted to meet with a delegation from the People's Progressive Party, a number of these questions were posed to him on the Saturday morning meeting. And his response, which you got very irate when we asked questions, his response was, with all these questions you were asking will be answered when the president appoints a commission of inquiry. And so they should wait until that. Well, a few days later, in fact, after we aired our program last week on the 20th, somewhere around there, the minister is quoted in the state media as saying that there will be no commission of inquiry into the July 9th fire and jailbreak, until all the escapees are captured. Well, I guess the minister didn't know there would be additional escapees. So let me just ask a question. Suppose they don't catch them. Suppose it takes a while to catch them. Then we, the people of this country, can't have answers to what are legitimate questions about what happened on July 9th. And of course now we have to add on what happened at the Lusignan pasture on July 24th. And what is happening at the prison, the Camp Street prison, the day after that, July 25th. So that means that if it takes them quite a while, let's say a year or more, does that mean that we, the people of this country, can have no answers to these questions? Imagine too that the government is trying to blame the PPP for all these things that are going wrong. That the PPP did not do this, it did not do that, it should have done this when its government didn't do that. And so that is why you had the catastrophic July 9th prison fire. That is why you had the March 2016, events at the prison, disturbance which led to 17 prisoners losing their lives, dying, being killed in the fire. So we're responsible, according to them, for the July 9th prison fire, which destroyed over 80% of the prison, the 8 escapees, one death of a prison officer who was buried yesterday, and again we extend our condolences to the family and the prison service officers and ranks, who must be quite traumatized by what happened. And also, by the way, there were injured persons. Now, why is it that the numbers of injured persons, nor the names of the injured persons, have not been made public? Well, our understanding is that these were prison officers. Is that true or not? Were prisoners injured too? We don't know. But we can ask Mr. Ramjatan. He wants to blame everybody for everything, and he wants the PPP to be his battering ram for all his inexcusable mistakes. So, Mr. Ramjatan, who put the prisoners in the Lusignan pasture? The PPP? The government really disrespects the intelligence of the Guyanese people. Seriously. Imagine when they laid the 2017 budget, the Guyana Prison Service budget was increased by almost 300 million for the current budget and a little over 300 million for the capital budget. The problem was this, and let me just take a minute or two to elaborate. The 2016 budget had 360 million for capital, for buildings, which included the extension of Mazaruni. And remember, the 2016 budget came in November 2016 after the March 2016 disturbance and death of 17 prisoners. So money was put in the 2016 budget for the extension of Mazaruni, and 2017 was supposed to be adding on to this. However, when we came to the November-December debate on the budget, where you look at the year before, that is 2016, and the projections for 2017, we found out, based on questioning, that of the $360 million that was put in the 2016 budget, by the way, 2016 budget was passed in February 2016, that none of the projects for buildings were completed, and this was in December 2016. And in fact, they confess that none of the projects for capitals, this is repairs to prison infrastructure, the extension of Mazaruni, would have been completed by December 31st, 2016. And these issues, as I said, specifically related to the extension of prisoner accommodation at Mazaruni Prison. So when they realized they could not do them, they then withheld the money for the extension for Mazaruni in December 2017, and then reallocated it into the 2017 budget. But the problem was to do extension works at Mazaruni that was accommodated and budgeted for in the 2016 budget. This is the height of incompetence. You pass a budget in February, even if we say they weren't on the ball, but March 2016 took place. So wouldn't that make you kind of speed up? Because you realize you're sitting on a time bomb at Camp Street? Wouldn't you try to get your butts moving and get the project, the extension of Mazzaroni and other infrastructure works to ensure that you are releasing the overcrowding or the population at Camp Street? This is the height of incompetence. So when the July 9th jailbreak and fire took place, the government was, and still is, in total confusion. Mazzaroni wasn't ready. They had not completed the prison accommodation, nor constructed the accommodation for prison staff. So how can you increase the number of prisoners going to Mazzaroni if you haven't included budgetary allocation for the staff? Because the numbers already at Mazzaroni, that is the staff, the custodial staff to monitor the prisoners at Mazzaroni, were based on the population that is accommodated in Mazzaroni. If you're going to send, as they've done now after July 19th, 145, 200, God knows how many, because you still can't get the right figures, have they sent up more prison staff? And where are they being accommodated? Because they're limited accommodation at Mazzaroni. Mazzaroni is enormous, lots and lots of land, but the accommodation has always been relatively controlled and small. So how have they now, having not built accommodation in 2016, provided for accommodation in 2016, not provided for accommodation in 2017 of the prison staff, suddenly as they're on to July 9th, ship guys off. So who's watching them? And how many? Or are the guys already at prison, that's the prison officers, are under now extreme duress because they're now dealing with a much larger population than that they were dealing with all the time. So we hear they're now coming for an additional 500 million. I assume from what they've said is that is to do works at Camp Street. But they haven't finished using the money that was budgeted in 2016 and rolled over to 2017. They still haven't used the $300 million more in capital in 2017, and it's July, almost the end of July. This government, has serious problems with priorities. Serious problems with priorities. And I'll give you a couple examples. Remember quite a few programs ago, I had to refer to the iguana-colored 20-foot slab concrete wall going up on the western side of the Ministry of the Presidency. I assume to match the iguana-colored walls of the buildings of the Ministry of the Presidency. And just by the way, the wall has been repainted a different color green. I think this is the third coating of paint on that. There was a color before that was kind of, a yellowy green, and then they put an iguana green. Now they have a green. So this is more like a Hamilton green than an Apnu green, but still Apnu seems to want any green color is theirs. So, and they weren't pleased in Parliament when I called it, and the paint was iguana color, and that was the Apnu color, was an iguana color green. Maybe some of them haven't seen an iguana recently, but iguanas have the same colors that they have. Well, my dear friends, if they had built a wall at any prison on Guyana, including the Luzerne pasture, like the one they built on the western side of the Ministry of the Presidency, no prisoners could have gotten away. But what we can't find in the 2017 budget at all, anywhere, is a provision for building that wall in the western side of the Ministry of Presidency. Maybe, maybe they've done it with donations and gifts, as they did with the Durban Park, with the Special Project Company. And afterwards, the bill became known that it was $1.5 billion that has been spent in the last year and a half. And of course, you know who's footing the bill. You and I and all the taxpayers of Guyana. So, if they had spent some of the money they're spending otherwhere, on arches and, Durban Park. Imagine $1.5 billion on Durban Park. If we had continued to use the stadium at Providence and the National Park, and take that $1.5 billion and fix up Camp Street and expand Mazaruni, the prisoners would have been, as Minister Ramjitan says, more comfortable, and there would be higher security, so that they may not have been able to do what they did on July 9th. Think about it. Think about it. As I said, they have a problem with priorities. And remember that the rationale for bringing the 2017 budget in November 2016, this is their rationale, was that by bringing it and passing it on December 21st, they would have a complete 12 months of the year to implement the budget, and therefore criticize us by saying our budget used to come between February and end of April, which the Constitution provides, by the way. And therefore, they were coming with a fresh start, brand new second-hand car. And so they came and they wanted 12 months. Of course, our criticism of that was that they hadn't closed the books. We didn't know how much money was spent as of October 2016, because the budget documents had to be prepared and printed and brought to Parliament for November 28. We want to know when was the cutoff time. So when we were looking at data, comparable data of 2015 and 2016, we had different responses from different ministers, and eventually we heard that these are projections of what will be spent by the end of 2017. So how are we, the people and the parliamentarians for the opposition, able to scrutinize a budget when you don't have real figures in front of you? You have estimates and guesstimates. And so they had the 12 months. It is now the end of July. We've finished 7 months of the year. And lo and behold, the Minister of Finance this week, stated, and is quoted in the press, that only 53% of the public sector investment program, which is called PSIP, has been awarded. That is, given contracts to do. But only 30% of those awards of contracts have been expended. 30%. 30%. And whilst a mere 28%, this is on your recurrent budget, this is your maintenance of roads and drains and canals, the smaller works. This is not your capital budget. But only 28% has been expended on maintenance infrastructure. Drains, what you call canals, drainage and irrigation, roads, and stuff like that, right? And so that explains why the heavy rains we've been having, you've had this flooding in different communities of the coastline, particularly areas that depend on the drainage and irrigation systems, the pumps and stuff like that, that have been neglected. This explains it to me. And now, what is the solution, my dear friends? Well, this 30% expenditure recurrent on your PSIP, 30% has been expended. 53% awarded, but only 30% expended. And only 28% of your recurrent budget has been spent. This is bungling and incompetence of no mean order. This is unbelievable. And of course, the usual excuse is blame the PPP for them not being able to implement their own budget. Absolutely incredible. I said before, they disrespect the intelligence of the Guyanese public. But they must remember, we have sat in Parliament, we've used our rights to express our views, to question them, to hold their feet to the fire. That's what oppositions do all over the world. But we never cut their budgets by $90 billion, which is what they did to us in the 10th Parliament, therefore trying to prevent us and making it extraordinarily difficult to deliver goods and services to the Guyanese people. Because the strategy was all along, curtail the budgetary allocations of the PPP, prevent them from doing their work, make life difficult, call a no-confidence motion, force an election. That was all part of the grand plan. And to a certain extent it worked. Because with 4,500 votes more, they're in Parliament. And they're in the executive. And remember, my dear friends, that they passed in 2015 a budget of $221 billion, far bigger than the PPP, any budget the PPP ever brought. And even with the cuts they brought to our budgets were never anywhere near $221 billion. And the budget for 2016 was $230 billion. And budget for 2017, $250 billion. And this isn't including the supplementary financial papers they brought for each of those budgets. That isn't including the increase of that. And an example is that the $250 billion for the 2017 budget, they've already bought a supplementary financial paper for over $6 billion, which was passed on July 7th. So you have to add $250 billion plus over $6 billion, right? So $256 billion. And of course, and they're coming for more money, and they haven't even spent 30% of their capital budget. And they're coming for more, because we have indications now they're coming for another $500 million for the Georgetown prison, on top of the $537 million in the 2017 budget for buildings under the prison, which they still have not expended fully. You think about that. If you ran your homes like that, you ran your little budgets in your homes like that, you would be totally bankrupt, wouldn't you? And you'd be in a state of crisis. Now, we tabled a motion in the National Assembly on the July 9th jailbreak and fire, and the July 24th prison escape. And we want answers to our questions. And I said on a program immediately after July 9th, we had posed on this program 22 questions. Well, the motion that we brought to the Parliament says, be it resolved. And it's been tabled, and we're waiting on the Speaker to allow us to bring the motion, and whether he will edit it as he normally, our motions as he normally does, which he's not allowed to. The Speaker's not allowed to do that, by the way. They either approve, don't approve. If they have concerns, they call in the member who is moving it to discuss what they think are not in keeping with the standing orders, but not to amend your motion and table it as he's amended. And of course, as I told you on one of the programs, where we put in the words, the previous PPPC government, he removed the words. He doesn't want PPPC on any motion, it appears. But be resolved that this National Assembly calls on the government, in accordance with Article 106, Subclause 2 of the Guyana Constitution, to accept collective responsibility to this House for the repeated events at all the prisons of Guyana. Be it further resolved that the National Assembly calls on the government to make a full disclosure of all aspects of the deplorable tragedy at the city jail on July 9, 2017, and to declare what actions are being taken to reduce the opportunities for such situations from reoccurring. And notice we said reduce, because even the best of situations can lead to events like that, but you take measures to deliberately reduce the opportunities. Be it further resolved that this National Assembly calls on the government to give full disclosure with regard to the circumstances surrounding the most recent escapees of July 24th. Be it further resolved that this National Assembly calls for the full disclosure of all aspects of the loss of 17 lives, prisoners, and the destruction of property that occurred there at the same prison in March 2016. Be it further resolved that this National Assembly lends its support to the disciplined forces to ensure public safety and the recapture of all the escapees and the protection of our citizens. And as I said, we'll see. We're waiting today to see whether he'll allow it. August 3rd is our day, and we'll wait and see. First of all, if he'll approve it, which we'll see what happens. And you know, there are 32 PPP MPs, right? And there are 33 government voting MPs. This includes ministers. And of course, they have the 3 non-voting ministers, what are called technocratic ministers. So they're not about to vote. So the government has 33 voters. But you know, in fact, the government has an additional member, not an MP. Guess who that is? Yes, you guessed right. Well, the government says they will bring the 2018 budget in November again, like last year. And the Ministry of Finance said it will be a conservative budget. Well, let's look at what does that mean. Will the ministers take a pay cut? Will they reduce the cost of their benefits and allowances and rental for their residences on the Treasury? Will they reduce that huge amount of money that is sucking money out of the Treasury? Will they reduce their traveling overseas and chartered flights being used inside and outside of Guyana? Will the ministers reduce their personal staff, including security, and a number of advisors who are all paid high salaries and benefits? By the way, for those of you who may call in and said PPP advisors too, let me just answer you on that one. There were only 2 advisors to the presidents under the PPP-C government, from 2006 to 2011 under President Jack Dale, and from 2012 to 2015 under President Ramatar. And who were these 2? Yours truly, myself, and Mr. Odinga Lumumba. And there were no advisors to ministers, none. And so we are faced with an enormous amount of advisors, both for the President, Prime Minister, ministers, and even now I notice the General Secretary of the PNC also has advisors. And so I must be wicked and say, you know, who is paying all these people? Particularly the new advisors of the General Secretary. And oh, by the way, don't forget that there are 33 honorific for overseas advisors, which Minister Harman is on record in Parliament saying they're not being paid any money for their services. And then we have a number of more embassies open, and of course, in Parliament we question what are the salaries of these new ambassadors and new staff that have been put into a number of the new missions, including the old ones. And of course, we were told that every ambassador negotiates his own salary and conditions of service. Think about it. And so it's an enormous amount of money. So where will the cuts come in the 2018 budget? Shall I predict? You bet. It is not going to be in any of these areas I pointed out, which, by the way, is costing billions of dollars, and which Bishop Edgehill is before the Privilege Committee. And by the way, although the government said Bishop Edgehill's aspersions that all of these will cost, in terms of the ministers' salaries, that it would cost an additional $1 billion to the Treasury over the 5 years. Minister Jordan has challenged that, and of course the Parliament office has put up their figures, which are completely different too. So they want to, you know, Bishop Edgehill. Well, Bishop Edgehill is a strong man, and so a strong person who knows himself and will not be intimidated. But let's get back to the budget 2018. The budget 2018, I am telling you, you've got people waiting. Are they going to take off the VAT on education? Are they going to take off the VAT on this? These are all things not only the PPP has championed. So have many people in civil society. But I bet you, because Minister Jordan has also said they need to increase revenue. What if he means about increased revenue, then he's talking about more taxation? No. Because no investments are coming in. No new investments are coming in. And they're cutting back on sugar. They're going to fire, by the end of this year, 8,000 odd workers from sugar. Bauxite is going down by their own admissions, and a number of people have been retrenched. The telephone companies have also been retrenching 100 people each, or approximately there, and we've had a number of companies being kicked out by this government, where several hundreds of jobs, 600, 700, 800 jobs have been lost. And of course in the hospitality services, a number of restaurants and places have been closed down. And we all know what the business, small and medium and large business, are complaining about the state of the economy. So as they say, you can't take blood out of a stone. You know, there's just so much people can give. So 2018 is not going to be a budget that's going to help the ordinary working people of this country. And they used to call us fat cats. I'm calling them super fat cats. Will continue to enjoy themselves. You know, last week we dealt with the president's comments, or a statement that was reported in the state media, where he accused the parliamentary opposition of being uncooperative to the level of being dysfunctional, and of an inflexible opposition as it relates to cooperation and engaging in talks. And at that meeting, that last program, we examined this in detail. But I noticed that the issue is it's kind of creeping back in to all sorts of layers. And people saying, to me, why can't you guys cooperate? Why can't you lend the government support? Why can't you do these things? Why can't the government and opposition work together? So you have some of them saying, try not to blame us. And then you have the others who are saying, who are APNU supporters saying, it's your fault, PPP, because you should be cooperating with the president. And so I decided that I would repeat some of the issues that I said last week, in case you didn't hear it. And so one of the arguments given for why the president said we're so uncooperative as to the level of dysfunctionality is the fact that we didn't sit and listen to the president's speech in October. And I'll explain that. We didn't sit because it was our day. It was opposition day. And we begged the government, please put the president's speech the day before. We'll come 2 days in a row to Parliament, but leave the time on our program. We've had to wait for months and months to have an opposition day. Do not do that. Of course, intransigent, no space for compromise. And so we did not sit in the House and listen to the president. We sat in the MP's lounge, where there are big TV screens, where we listened to what he said. And when the motion on the president's speech came up for debate, we debated it wholeheartedly. And I want to remind everybody that on August 17, 2015, which was the day we went to Parliament, the first day we went to Parliament, to engage in the 2015 budget, which had been laid a week before by Minister Jordan, the first budget of the APNU AFC government. And the leading opposition, Mr. Barry Jagdeo, made a statement that we've repeated several times in Parliament and elsewhere, including in the media, that we will support matters that the government brings that will benefit our people and our nation. And we reserve the right to criticize matters and issues which hurt the people and the nation. And I said, this is a mantra of the PPPC. This is our mantra. We repeat it all again and again and again. But the problem is that the opposition, the government could never be satisfied with that. Could never be satisfied with that. Because their view is, as reflected in the speeches that the government ministers made at May Day in the National Park, was that one, Guyanese people be patient. It's only 2 years they've been in government. And be patient for oil. We'll all be millionaires. And secondly, what Mr. Trotman said on behalf of the president was that they are looking forward to the trade union movement, lending full support for all the initiatives of the government. Well, naturally, governments and trade unions have a natural friction because one is representing employees, the other is representing employers, whether it's government or the private. But that's what was the call on May Day. So are you surprised when they have this knee-jerk reaction when the opposition plays its role as an opposition? And as I've said, we have offered support on matters that are beneficial to people. We've been in government. We know a thing or two. But they know it all. And this attitude of bullyism and arrogance has only got worse in the last 2.5 years. And so I go back to December 2015, when the president did meet with the leader of the opposition, the first meeting. And the leader in that meeting and publicly, officially, gave the PPC support to the government of Guyana, the APNU AFC government of Guyana, its support on Guyana's territorial sovereignty and support to the Guyana government in regards to the controversy with Guyana and Venezuela, and Venezuela's claim that the 1899 arbitral award is null and void. We made it very clear that they had our total support. And as a result, the only area of formal cooperation between the opposition, parliamentary opposition, and the government is with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on the matter of standing up in relation to Guyana's borders. And where the opposition, yours truly, is the one representative on the minister's advisory team, which comprises of a relatively large group of people. There are about 25 or so. At the meeting in December 2015, the president spoke of other committees and opportunities for partnership between the Guyana or collaboration between the opposition and the government. And one of the areas was on the border and security. So to have a national committee on the borders, not just Venezuela, and security, which the leading opposition offered support. Up to today, the president, as far as we know, has not followed up with that offer. We have had no indication, and that we don't know if that committee was set up already, and it excludes us, but I'm just giving you an idea. The Parliament, the 11th Parliament, has been one of bullyism and undermining of the standing orders. When Minister Trotman assaulted verbally the leading opposition on June the 15th, and we had Minister Broom's selfie in the chambers of the House. On the July 7th sitting, the Speaker reprimanded Nigel Darmlal, or didn't give his name, but named a member. Later on, the Guyana Chronicle named Nigel Darmlal, I correct myself, and so saying about his comments about the Speaker on his Facebook. And passed over quite, softly that he wasn't happy about the selfie in Parliament. There was no reprimand. And then went on to say that he didn't believe that what Minister Trotman said was unacceptable. So we live in a Parliament where we get up and speak and we are being interrupted and corrected of what's parliamentary and not parliamentary and what we can and cannot do. But a former Speaker and now Minister in this government can attack the leading opposition, and I think some of you have seen some of the words he used, and the Speaker allows all of it to be said. And yet when Mr. Nandalal was speaking on the deeds, one of the bills, I think it was Deeds and Commercial Registries Bill, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and was at one of the sittings and was being heckled by Minister Ramjatan, and then we realized that Minister Ramjatan was very inebriated at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He was bombed out. And when the Speaker brought that, when Mr. Nandalal brought that to the attention of the Speaker and we called for a breathalyzer, the Speaker just passed it over. So the the hand is not even and fair in the National Assembly, and the Speaker is expected to be impartial, to treat both sides fairly. And in the government side, if you're talking about, oh, we must cooperate, why is it that not one amendment on any bill that we've made, including those to do with VAT, and restoring of zero rating VAT on essential items, not one motion of the Parliament, of the opposition, have been accepted, even ones that are soft, such as curbing suicide? Is that an issue to be made partisan? The motion we brought on suicide was defeated, like all the other motions we bring to the House. The one on crime, that was defeated too, and that was in early 2016. And so we can't even get an agreement on a date which is suitable to us for our opposition days. It is mostly we comply and understand, even though we try to get our days, because sometimes we don't have people who can come to the Parliament on the days they want, they meaning the government. But the government has 33 MPs, and we have 32. So the government always has to make sure that all 33 are physically there for Parliament, because they don't trust that we could bring something and they lose the vote. And they cannot ever contain them losing a vote on anything. And so, as I keep saying, this government is their way or no way. And refusal, as I've said, to accept changes that we brought in the interests of the Guyanese people to do with, for example, VAT. And of course, outside the budget, outside the Parliament itself, talks on the 2016 and 2017 budget, which we were invited to, we could not go to because we asked to have preliminary data, because we have experience with budgets, that we can have a real input into what the budget says and provides for this country. So you can't have access to data. So you're just supposed to sit there and plan in your head and come up with wild notions and go to them. The second issue, the second area outside of Parliament, the sugar industry. They threw out their own commission of inquiry on Gaisuko. They have gone their own path in relation to sugar. They had, in December 2016, on the eve of the last day of the year, hurriedly called us to our PPP to a meeting to discuss Gaisuko. They had to have the positions clearly before that. And that was it. There was no opportunity for dialogue. Saying that I'm inviting you to my house for a cup of tea, and then when you come, and I say, well, by the way, I have cake and I have some other things, but you can't have that. Just come sit at the table. But I'm going to give other people stuff. It's almost like that in a way. And of course, the big elephant in the room is GCOM and the appointment of the chairman of GCOM. And you know the story, and we're still waiting, and we're trying to get another set of names to submit to the President. And we talked last week a lot about the Chief Justice ruling. I read from what are some of the issues that she ruled on, which vindicate our position on the interpretation of the Constitution, which differs radically from what the President interprets it from. And we talked about the statement he made about the Chief Justice gave an opinion based on her perception of the law, and I, President, will continue to act within my perception of the Constitution. Well, of course, this statement caused havoc among the lawyers, the judiciary, and general population. And so the state media went into damage control, crisis mode to try to soften and to explain what the President really meant. And so, when the President says we're uncooperative to the point of being dysfunctional, can one believe that? Because there seems to be a divorce between reality and the fiction that they've created amongst themselves. And so they seem to be living, as I keep saying, in La La Land, somewhere else, and not here in Guyana. Because fundamental to cooperation consensus building is good faith efforts. And you can't have good faith efforts and consensus if it is based on bad faith efforts, exclusion, bullyism, no engagement except when you want it to be for yourself. And so let's open the floor to questions and comments. And as usual, my dear friends, I'm saying I can't answer calls that I can't see the numbers. I'm sorry to do that to you. I know I have a problem with my phone too, with my number, but because this is a program that we do take calls from any and everybody, and I don't want in any occasion to have a libel charge come against me, the program, and or Mr. Sharma. So the lines are open, and certainly people can call in. Again, the first call coming in is a no number, so can I ask that, I'm sorry, sir or madam, we need to have the numbers come up, okay? All right, so we were talking about priorities, and so one of the priorities I wanted to raise with you and ask you about, as I said, I'm waiting for other calls to come in. Hello, good afternoon, welcome to Matters of Public Importance.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon.
I got one question.
Yes?
If PPP been a rule, right?
Yeah.
That gone down the innocent man. If PPP a ruling happened, the whole judge so me bond down. Because PPP na rules, then I come out to protest now. But if PPP a rule, I mean I come out by thousands of protests and bond down place.
Yeah.
And even though the jailbreaker, they will come by thousands and start burn down. If PPP been a rule, that is true, that is not lie. And I never get account how much jailbreaker go away, but what happened is not the truth what they must say. It's more than that for SKP. You understand, 100 and something. But they now get a good figure for you look bad.
Yeah.
What exactly happened?
All right, thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, there is a lot of doubt as to really what is the government, what's the truth, about how many escapees, how many people who may have died, didn't die, etc. Wait a minute. Give me a sec. Yeah, I did press that. Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to Matters of Public Importance.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Hi.
Concerning with the prisoner,
Yeah.
is the mistake a president go and pardon and continue pardon others and others and plenty more. So the other them need freedom too. So them give you a fine that's gonna happen. When they want more attention, they're gonna burn again. And they had a riot right in Mazzaroni, but they don't want to publish it,
Yeah,
they could have born there. You understand? If they born there and they born in Amsterdam, where are they going to put the prisoner?
Yeah.
And another thing too, I have some friends come from foreign, normally 5-6 of them just come, right? They spend vacation on August month. Now, 15 of them supposed to come. Normally when the guys come, they work like $70,000 each them as work. So the company leavers got to give them back money because they spend out all the money. And then when I go over there, they give me back. Right? So the guys tell me, they're not coming. They're not coming, and they will never come back because that I can try if I want to see, I can see if I want to go with them, it's okay, I could leave them. But I like Guyana. And I'm going to stay in Guyana. I tell them, I did decide that I'm going to stay when they are come, but they're still not coming back. And I see the whole Liberty Avenue and Richmond, they're talking there, the room around that out, guys mustn't go home because enough escapees out. It's plenty. And I know what them saying because they don't want to confirm the figure. And let me tell you something, you got a guy named Cabro, he gets sent to something here. And nobody, I ain't seen nobody talking about him. He was the head man for the jail. None police no one doing nothing there. And he's out here right now. And that guy is a serious guy, I know I tell you. He might take 5 man's peace. I know I tell you.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, these are big issues, and the people will speculate if you don't have the ministers and the heads of services telling you in a factual way what happened, how many people. They tell you they sent so many to Mazruni, sent so many to Lusignan, sent so many to Timeri, sent so many to New Amsterdam, and then they subtract that total from what is the total they say was there on Sunday, July 9th of 1,118, and they tell you that's the group that's in Lusignan. That's not exactly what we're talking about. We want an account that says X number in each prison, including the pastor or wherever else you put them. But the government doesn't like disclosure. I keep telling you, this government believes that by withholding information, they're able to control a situation. That the less you know the people, the better for them in government. Let me take another call. Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to Matters of Public Importance. Hello? Hello? Good afternoon, welcome. Oops. Okay, I kind of lost one and... yeah, this government seems to have a problem of dealing with priorities. And I was going to say, oh, they're not calling now. Okay, good afternoon, welcome to Matters of Public Importance. Yes,
I hear all what you're talking about. People is different, but they don't ask me like things. Mr. Ranger got 3 points. One a blind, one deaf, and one don't see. And like he not see himself because this country running like stupid people running here. The Bobby son, they can't get food properly feed because they destroy the estate them.
Yeah.
When I'm done, Grant can doing one sort of madness and starting share madness from the ear. Sharma used to go all the time and do all kinds of things to people, now he don't go nowhere.
Right.
You're there on the TV and you set off people's phone when they call you. He don't want to hear what's going on.
So I hear.
Nobody don't want to do the right thing no more. When the PPP used to do things, all they used to rush come out on the road. The white people now telling the black people that they get so much money for the aisle. So, you don't understand what's going on? The country is going to go no more at all. Thank you.
Thank you. I know how people feel, and people are feeling very down and anxious about what's going on now and for the future of our country. But I'll say this, never give up on Guyana. We have many challenges, and 2020 elections will come, and there will be a change. We promise you, there will be a change. But we got a lot of work to do before that. And that's why the big battle on the appointment of the chairman of GCOM. And the longer it takes to appoint a chairman of GCOM, the longer the election machinery is left unmonitored and in the hands of a chief elections officer, who is the person blocking the PPPC petition to the court for the 2015 election. So, but I said, don't get despondent. You know, we went through a long struggle to bring change in 92 and a long struggle to try to reconstruct our country. And we can do it again, and we will do it again. And the younger population, it is not just people of my age. The younger population is coming out, the social media, their talks, even though the government is monitoring people's social media and their Facebooks, and they're monitoring this program, and they're monitoring any program that we're on. We understand that. When we hope to keep them very busy in their monitoring of what we say and do. But we're exercising our right to express ourselves. So don't get despondent, please. Things will change. Okay, one last caller, then I'll have to start closing off. Sorry. Yes, good afternoon. Welcome to Matters of Public Importance.
Hello?
Yes, hello. Welcome
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to Matters of Public Importance.
Thank you. This is the first time I'm getting through ever. I always try calling, but I never ever get through.
I know, I'm sorry.
Yes. The point I want to make, I totally agree with the person that's calling and say that if PPP was in power with this jailbreak, it would have so much protest.
Yeah.
The might would have wanted to do so much, and nobody's not doing anything now.
Yeah.
You know? So
Yes.
that is what I can't understand. Me and my whole family, 15 of us, vote for this government the last election. And this time, never, ever, ever again. Never. We're all going to vote for PPP. That's a huge mistake we made.
Yeah.
And I'm so sorry. But as far as I know, my beloved President Barjaglia is going to win back the next election. I don't care what they say.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And
You are so welcome.
Thank you for your honesty. It's a very hard admission for anybody to say, look, we made a mistake. And it's even harder to make it publicly. So I congratulate you for your courage and your strength. And we hope that you'll make sure that all 15 people are on the voters list and that they go out to vote in the next general elections. And of course, local government elections before. So we're coming to the end of the program. I'm being reminded by the technician that we're coming down the line. And you do know that I have Parliament today. We will be discussing a number of issues, including the Tobacco Control Bill, which I will bring up on this program because there are so many concerns about it to do. The government and anybody has a right to bring a bill that would reduce smoking and reduce secondhand smoking. All that's absolutely correct. But obviously, when you say to the vendors that you cannot sell cigarettes unless it's in a pack of 20 intact, and the penalties are extraordinarily high, then that becomes an issue, telling you can't smoke in your house, if you have anybody working in your house, etc., etc. Those are issues that we'll talk about more. I don't want to get you excited about those issues. Okay, so this is a weekend, and I know that you look forward to a weekend after a hard week's work, and that August the 1st, Emancipation Day, it is the 183rd anniversary since the abolition of slavery in our country and the end of the apprenticeship period, and we hope that everyone will participate in the village activities that take place across the country, and we recognize the contributions of all those who are descendants who were brought here as slaves under terrible, inhumane, and what are considered, seriously genocidal conditions that the descendants have lived up to, the strength and courage our ancestors brought to this country, their culture, and that they have contributed to our land, and they continue to contribute to our land. And that we as a people must recognize that we're multi-ethnic, multi-religious, and multi-language. There are 9 Amerindian languages in our country, so we always think we're English speaking, and we are, but we must also recognize multi-religious and multi-ethnic and multicultural. And so as we celebrate Emancipation Day, as Bob Marley said, emancipate yourselves mentally. And so we look forward to next week seeing you, next Thursday. We also have Parliament that day, and so we will, as usual, being under pressure to do both the program and the Parliament, but we'll manage, don't you worry. So we'll see you back again. As I always tell you, don't drink and drive carefully, and make sure that you're able to take care of your families and your loved ones, and we will see each other. And of course, the last closing lick, as we say, last lick, is the one I always say to you. And struggle we shall, and silent we shall not be. Silence is the greatest enemy of democracy. Silence makes those in power think they can get away with anything. Silence helps those who want more control and less democracy, and those who want to move this country to a police state. And so, silence is our greatest enemy. Thank you very much. Take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful weekend. God bless you. Ta-ta.